don't see anything.
Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. So, in the West we hold this view of tolerance, this value of tolerance, especially when it comes to journalists and politicians. Like, this tolerance is, particularly when it comes to leftists, just can be considered like repressive tolerance. Repressive tolerance is basically two-tiered justice, that sort of deal, where you hold one side to really strict standards, you don't hold the other side to any standards at all. For example, in the West, like just allowing radical Islamist and far-left protests and riots just to spin out of control, like including arson, assault, murder, just allowing all that to occur, while you're absolutely cracking the fuck down on anything reactionary to that on the right. For example, old Lucy Connolly getting 2 years in prison for saying on the internet, burn down the hotels, after Axel Rudikabana fucking stabbed and tried to behead like little girls at a dance studio. Some like radical Islamist cunt tries to do that. Like, it's absolutely unacceptable. But in the West we have tolerance, and it basically gets used against us by radicals. This like far left repressive tolerance, like being implemented by politicians, is incurring what I would call like a ruthless debt in the right. And I'm guessing many hold views similar to mine, of basically, fuck domestic terrorists, why not drive like a car through them if you see them in the middle of the road. You can see this in groups on Facebook, like Cars versus protesters, which I think might have recently got banned, but I was following that group. But it's at the point where you get a lot of people on the right just thinking the world would be a much better place if you did, and it's like really hard to argue against that when like a third of the people Kyle Rittenhouse killed were horrible pedophiles. He didn't even kill 3 people. He shot like a domestic abuser, a communist medic, and a fucking horrible pedophile that just got released from like a mental institution who'd like fucking raped multiple kids. Like, yeah, like we're at this point, right? And it's just absolutely fucking terrible. Like, the people in charge are allowing the actions of these mobs to just erode rights and like erode tolerance. Just this unjust tolerance of like evil actors. like obviously committing malevolent evil, just not being punished at all for their actions. And like you see a lot of this in liberal sort of values, the idea of allowing pedophile, like not having the death penalty for like pedophilia and shit like that, or like abduction and gang rape, like recently happened in Australia. Like if you surveyed people on the street, just normal people, I'm pretty sure the majority are going to say, oh, nah, just fucking hang those cunts. Like, why keep them alive in a prison? Like, we don't want them in a society. Like, you don't want an abductor and a gang rapist in a society. You don't want a pedophile in society. Like, you wouldn't... Like, you're not going to forgive them. Their crimes are past forgiveness. The damage they've done is permanent in most cases. Like, there's obviously a bit more room for interpretation when it comes to murder, because you get figures like Sogomon Tehlirian, who was the Armenian who assassinated all the one of the Armenians that assassinated one of the perpetrators of the Armenian genocide. Like, murder's a different case, because you've obviously got self-defense, and you've obviously got cases like Sogomon Tehlirian, or that Soviet mother that killed the murderer and rapist of her daughter, and then got like 15 years in prison for it in the Soviet Union. Like, you've got these various cases, so murder's a different deal. But there's certain crimes, just like rape, gang rape, sexual torture, pedophilia, that we can all pretty much get behind, are deserving of death, right? Like, you're not going to rehabilitate those people. Even if you could, their crimes are past forgiveness in just a normal society. You would be doing them a favour killing them, because they're very likely not going to be able to be rehabilitated, and they will just do more damage. But instead of that, you've got these leftist leaders in charge that preach tolerance of that sort of thing, and that tolerance it's really bad. It's bad for peace, it's bad for society, it's increasing tension in society, and it's bad for tolerance in itself. But, like, this is just in Western society. Western society isn't involved directly in a war at the moment. But if it were at war, like, would that be a step too far to allow all this repressive tolerance of basically evil, malevolent actors conducting riots and stuff, which we all agree is past the point of free speech? Once you're burning shit down and assaulting people, it's no longer about free speech or freedom of expression. Right, so the main question is Israel justified bombing propagandist journalists linked to Hamas in Gaza? We hear a lot from the left that these are innocent journalists, that they're not doing anything wrong, all that sort of deal, that they're civilians. Like, it's more complicated than that. Like, obviously first we should get the easy stuff out of the way. So-called civilians, so-called Palestinian civilians that are acting as either spotters or spies or informants for Hamas, and are either pointing out Israeli positions or checkpoints, Israeli positions for ambushes, checkpoints for guerrilla sniping, or aid distribution points, or Gazan civilians that have accepted Israeli aid and US aid, so they can essentially be tortured to death. Like, as far as I'm concerned, those people are the definition of a combatant at that point, and you cannot list them as a civilian if they were then to get bombed in, say, like an airstrike or something. That's just a spotter or a spy, in my opinion. Like, they can at least be justifiably killed, because their actions are bringing about death in either guerrilla sniping, ambush, or, you know, being tortured to death by Hamas for, like, say, a Gazan civilian getting aid from Israelis or the US. And obviously my definitions and attitude here create a pretty large overlap with what the left would call Palestinian civilians. Because, like, basically my definition here would consider a ton of Palestinian civilians essentially complicit with Hamas's crimes. Like, if you remember the videos of the cheering Palestinians when the Hamas brought the civilian Israeli hostages back into the streets in the backs of pickup trucks and stuff, those streets were fucking packed. There were thousands of people on that street, if not tens of thousands of people on that street. We don't have any idea how many Palestinians do support Hamas, but what we have there is direct video evidence of at least thousands, if not tens of thousands, on those streets, in those videos, supporting Hamas's actions on October 7th, directly, fresh after a massacre. But anyway, those are the easy cases, right? The spotters, the spies, the informants. They can be considered combatants, in my opinion. And bombing them would, subsequently be justified. So anyway, let's make it a little bit more complicated. Let's say, for example, it's like the opening of American Sniper, where the mother gives the suicide bomb, the artillery shell, to the little boy and sends them in, like, against the Americans. I think it was in Syria or whatever. And then Chris Kyle has to shoot the little kid, however old he is. Let's say it's an example like that. Let's say Hamas is using a 15-year-old kid as a spotter for like an Israeli convoy or something similar to that. And they intend to ambush this Israeli convoy with IEDs, RPGs, or recoilless rifles as they, roll down the street. That 15-year-old is then technically a combatant. But, also technically a child, but technically a combatant. The actions of said child may be allowing the maneuver of a guerrilla force in the tunnels underneath to attack a convoy and suck a kill IDF. So that's like the definition of a combatant. Would you guys agree with that? Is that 15-year-old like a combatant? They're acting as a spotter. They're an actor in the maneuver of a guerrilla force about to conduct an ambush. But, like, primarily Islamic forces do that fucking shit all the time. They use child soldiers fucking everywhere. Like, what? Like, African Islamic forces have used child soldiers, right? Like, there's other examples too. Like, child suicide bombing was used at least 15 times in the second intifada to attack directly Israeli checkpoints and Israeli civilians. Child suicide wave attacks were used by Iran in the Iran-Iraq war. They were given like nothing but plastic keys and sent against Iraqi positions. The Iraqis then had to fucking just machine gun the fuck out of them. The use of child soldiers is a war crime in and of itself, right? Even if, say, you're a guerrilla force and you're using said child as a spotter, that is still technically a war crime. Like, for that to not be a war crime in, like, asymmetrical warfare, that spotter in our theoretical example would have to be over 18 or older, and be male and be in full combat uniform, easily distinguishable from a civilian. But if that were the case, they'd instantly be spotted by drone or satellite and bombed, and the underground ambush would be blind and underground in their tunnels, know where the convoy's going, and wouldn't be able to successfully ambush the convoy, right? But for some reason, this global criticism of this Muslim way of warfare, like using children as soldiers and spotters and civilians as shields, just is not criticized or looked at all by any of the global authorities, by the UN, by the EU. Like, nowhere criticizes it or condemns it. But that's what it is. It's like a war crime. It's a systematic use of a war crime as a method of war. That's like fucking 3 war crimes. Like, and that's just purely in the method. But if the IDF then treated the 15-year-old as the combatant, as he clearly is, he's fulfilling the role of a combatant, and then bombed that kid in the same manner as they would bomb like a regular spotter, the global community that would then condemn it as killing a child. Like, the statistics on the civilians and women and children killed, and the definitions of women and children in this conflict, like, they're not reported well or accurately. Like, a 15-year-old with an AK can still shoot any number of people. Like, there's been videos, I think there was a video from LiveLeak in Russia of a massacre conducted by like a 15-year-old jihadi in like a shopping center. Like, he can shoot people just the same as anyone else can. Like, but like, then what, the global community, given Hamas propaganda, is going to report that as the killing of a child? Like, it doesn't, like, it's not correct. Like, if you know what I mean. Like, it's still a combatant, and if anything, we should be condemning Hamas for using child soldiers rather than condemning the Israelis for killing children. And that's just one method, right? Like, they use children on bikes as for communications, as runners and stuff as well. But then what? Then you're not allowed to attack the child on a bike, you know, performing communications for Hamas. Like, let's say they did that and they let the runner get through. That runner may be carrying like messages about an Israeli attempt to rescue hostages. Just like, in itself, the act of, you know, doing a massacre and taking a hostage and holding a hostage and torturing a hostage, that's like 4 or 5 war crimes right there. Like, why isn't Hamas being brought up on that shit? Like, that's using child soldiers, that's no uniform, which in itself is a war crime, being unable to be distinguished from civilians. That's killing civilians in a massacre on October 7th. That's taking hostages, IDF, and taking civilian hostages. That's 2 more war crimes. Torturing hostages itself, torturing civilians itself, those are both separate war crimes. Executing hostages, which they've done, like, that's like fucking 8 war crimes worked into a systematic methodology of war deliberately, right? Where is the condemnation from the Muslim community? Or the world, exactly. Anyway, let's say, given all that, you're going to ignore all that, you're going to not treat it as one of the many instances of Muslim civil wars or whatever in their nations where they systematically do this. Let's say we're not going to treat it like that. We're going to condemn Israel as if it is invading another country and doing this. We're not going to treat it as a civil war or a pseudo-civil war. Okay, and we're going to give a pass to all the Muslim actions while we're doing this. Like, itself, 2-tier globally doing this. Treating Palestinians globally and Hamas globally as if they are above the law. Let's say we're going to do all that. Then let's say you have a civilian working in a journalist propaganda capacity alongside Hamas, complicit with Hamas, working to help Hamas achieve its goals. Full biased propagandist, misrepresenting the civilian dead, playing up civilian casualties, ignoring war crimes. And, like, we got to point out, if they were honest about any of it, the Palestinian Broadcasting Association would likely immediately tip off Hamas, some form of Hamas wing that kills its own civilians, i.e. their government, and they'd likely be snatched off the street and either killed or tortured to death. So at the very least, let's say you've got a propagandist like that, complicit with an organisation that blatantly commits 8 war crimes systematically in their method of war, and are part of the organisation, which we'll call a terrorist organisation, I guess, and its terrorist goals. That sounds to me an awful lot like terrorism, even though they're not directly a combatant, they're acting within a civilian capacity, civilian propagandist capacity, let's say. That still sounds to me an awful lot like part of a conspiracy to commit terrorism, because they are facilitating said terrorism. Like, if we take the definition of war as the next step of achieving a goal through political means, they're aiding the war effort through propaganda. Like, it's literally the strategy of Hamas. Like, as an example, like, would you consider Goebbels, who was largely a non-combatant for the Nazis, like, he was not a non-combatant, like, he didn't directly kill anyone, like, I'm pretty sure he wasn't heaps involved in, say, like an Adolf Eichmann or whatever, in the transportation or mass killings of civilians, the experimentation of using the different gases in the gas chambers and all that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure he was not really involved with any of that at all. He was non-combatant. He was the Minister for Propaganda. Do you still regard him as a military target? Like, almost anyone would, right? They're not going to spare him. Like, he's like one of the most evil Nazis. He's facilitating the regime. He's facilitating the image of the regime. Helping it run while it commits its horrible crimes, just providing like an illusion to the masses of Germany, let's say. So, let's say if that's the case, do you consider Gazan journalists the same? Like, you sort of have to, right? Like, a journalist is just someone who shares information to the public, but in the West, these days, like, especially amongst the rabid left and the rabid Islamists, they've stretched that definition to like an insane degree with framing and like lying by structure, lying by omission, all that sort of shit. They basically lie as much as they can by structure and implication and omission. Even if they're reporting technically, factually, they are still misleading. But the fact that they factually report can save them from legal liability. And that's in the West, where it's meant to be okay. There's no courts in Gaza to hold journalists to their duties and responsibilities. Like, in Gaza, there's no, like, defamation laws. You're not allowed to lie. Like, with defamation laws, you're not allowed to, like, lie and slander to destroy someone's reputation. If you do that, you're, like, subject to being sued and can lose money and all that sort of shit, civil charges. In Gaza, Hamas control the government, and if you try to sue them for misinformation or slander or libel or anything like that, they'll probably just abduct you and torture you to death. Like, it's not perfect in the West, but in Gaza it's non-existent. And then you've got other shit like accuracy and truthfulness. Like, most organizations in the West at least have to project this factually, even if they do their best to lie through narrative, omission, opinion, all that sort of shit. If they present incorrect information, they could, in theory, suffer reputational damage, or, inflict defamation, then be liable to courts. Well, not if the critics are just arrested and tortured to death in Gaza. All the standard checks and balances on journalists just don't exist in Gaza because Hamas is the government in Gaza. Like, no one points this out. Like, why would you ever trust their numbers? It's absolutely fucking retarded. Like, another example would be, like, privacy laws, right? You're not allowed to dox people or post personal information or use that personal information to blackmail people. Unless Hamas is in the government and want to know where they are so they can abduct them and torture them to death in Gaza. Like, yeah, obviously, right? And just, this is to say nothing about, like, whistleblowers or shit like that. Like, let's say you're a whistleblower and you want to post sensitive information about wrongdoing by your government. oh whoops, your government is Hamas if you're in Gaza and they've abducted you and tortured you to death. Let's say you're a journalist who has a source who's acting as a whistleblower in the government. Oh whoops, Hamas has abducted you, tortured you until they got your source out of you, killed you, then abducted your source and tortured your source to death. Like, the standard balances that don't do enough in the West to curb dishonest media and dishonest journalism in the West, they don't even exist in Gaza, but you all, like, and then you have people parroting the shit that comes out of Gaza without even checking it. Like, it's absolutely retarded. Like, are you noticing a pattern of journalism in Gaza yet? Are you noticing, like, let's say, a certain political bias in the journalists that would be allowed to function in Gaza? Apparently the BBC don't. They just report Hamas numbers without even blinking and repeat wholesale claims like a gajillion babies will die in the next 10 seconds in Gaza if Hamas don't win. And like, people buy it. It's absolutely fucking wild. Like, it's insane. What was the one that they repeated the other day? Israelis killed like a bunch of people at like a distribution center or whatever. They don't point out that Hamas is deliberately attacking civilians at these areas in order to prevent the civilians from getting aid, so they're reliant on Hamas's aid. Like, no one's pointing that out. And the outcome is either people starve to death because they don't want to go along with Hamas, or they have to rely on Hamas. So then they're complicit and get to be used as human shields or opinion by Hamas, their government. Like, the disruption of aid in Gaza, the disruption of, let's say, the supplying of Western aid in these distribution centers, which Hamas have also attacked with grenades, by the way, like, that's serving only to strategically starve their own people. Like, that's like another atrocity Hamas is inflicting on its own people. Like, it's wild. And then you've just got so-called Gazan journalists complicit with the Hamas government, ignoring that, repeating other shit like, oh, at the aid station there was a stampede, and the Israelis had to shoot all these innocent civilians that were stampeded. Like, they don't point out that Hamas is like shooting either side of them to try and stampede the Gazans into the Israeli defense sections, because it's only like a chain link fence and a berm. It's not like towers and stuff. It's just wild. And BBC, like, they should be in prison. Like, that's fucked. Yeah. But anyway, the whole situation's kind of wild.